Hello and welcome, it's the Green Squire with some tips for Aeon. First up is the Sacrifice ability, which all engineers have, that essentially sacrifices the unit and puts a portion of their value into whatever project you're working on. So as you can see here, this Galactic Colossus is about 20,550 hit points, and if I go ahead and sacrifice this Tech 1 engineer, you can see it jump up to 2590, which is, it's about 50 mass more. It's kind of deteriorating, but this works with Tech 1. It works with Tech 2 for a little bit more mass. Now that went up a couple hundred, and so 2700. And now let's see what this guy gives. Went up about 300 that time. This also works with support commanders if you get the left arm upgrade for it. It doesn't come default with it when you get it right out of the Quantum Gateway, but if you get just a raw blank support commander, not one of the presets, you can go ahead and give him the upgrade like so, and he will give an even bigger chunk of change. Let's see, around 2100. Let's see what it goes up to. So that is a pretty decent chunk of change right there. One very dirty late game tactic is to get a few of these guys, upgrade them all with not only the sacrifice system, but also the teleporting system, if I can find it right here. Let's go ahead and let them finish this. I'll speed it up a little bit, and then I'll upgrade these guys with the teleporter. You may want to do this one at a time because it's a little bit energy intensive. And now that these guys are all upgraded with not only the sacrifice but also the teleport, let's go ahead and teleport them somewhere very dirty, like how about over here across the map. And again, teleporting also costs energy, so probably you're going to want to do this maybe one at a time. And they've teleported, so here they are over here, freshly teleported in, and now you have a very mobile and almost instantaneous force that can build things. So it doesn't have to be an experimental, like maybe you just want to build a land factory over here, and starts going up quickly, and we'll just sacrifice one of these guys. And bam, instantly completed. So not only that, maybe you want to build like a heavy shield generator, and you can just sacrifice the guy that's building it. It looks like that went up about halfway, so you have a choice. You can either continue to just regularly help it build, as these guys are Tech 3 engineer equivalents, and mind you, at the same time, all these other guys can be building, you know, air defense, land defense. So this is a very, very quick and dirty way to go anywhere on the map, and your opponent probably won't see it coming. If you go to somewhere like a corner of the map with very little radar range, they will definitely not be expecting some Tech 3 units to come out of a well-established firebase like this. Next up is that Harbingers actually have an engineering suite on them. If you can see in yellow right here in their unit description, it's just a Tech 1 engineering suite, and they can only assist, repair, and reclaim things. But this is nothing to ignore. For instance, if you have some Harbingers on the front line, you can reclaim stuff like these trees, maybe those rocks over there. You can reclaim units after a downed battle, and you can even assist engineers with things like flak if you're under immediate air attack. So just a nice little bonus ability that you get with these already superb T3 units. Next up, we're taking a look at all of the land units that can hover. Aeon is the faction that loves what Guile would call the floaty, naughty units, as they have a Tech 1 light tank as well as the light scout. At Tech 2, they have the assault tank like all factions, but they also have a shield generator which can float, as well as mobile flak. And at Tech 3, they have a shield disruptor. Now, all this stuff can, of course, be used on land like normal, but a few of these units you actually can mix in with your navy to add a pretty significant edge, one of them being this mobile shield generator. You can put that with your navy, and you're probably going to want a lot of these because navy is generally stronger than their land counterparts, but UEF is the only one with the dedicated shield boat for navy, and Aeon can kind of match that with a bunch of these mobile shield generators. Not only that, but if you are playing against UEF and they are going with the shield boats, you can take in this shield disruptor to kind of give yourself an edge against them. And lastly, you can take some of this mobile flak artillery for significantly cheaper than cruisers. So if you're kind of stalling on resources a little bit and you're worried about gunship rushes on your navy, instead of building a cruiser for 2,000 mass, you can build a few flak AA for 160 mass each, and then just go float them with your navy. And one bonus tip is that Aeon is the only faction that does not have a deck gun on their submarine. So the other factions have a little deck gun that if your submarines are just kind of off on their own, they can shoot at some of these mass extractors on land, and the deck gun is actually farther range than Tech 1 frigates, I believe, but all of that's moot point for Aeon because they don't have the deck gun. And the reason why their submarine doesn't have a deck gun is because the Aeons are huge fans of unit specialization, and as you can see here, their navy is the only one where the frigate does not have any anti-air defense. There's torpedo defense, sonar, and radar, but you need this shard attack boat to fill in the anti-air role. Additionally, they're the only faction to not have a fighter bomber at the Tech 2 stage, and instead have anti-air only Tech 2 fighter and divide their ground attack into the Mercy guided missile. And while the dual role purpose of the Tech 2 fighter might be missed in some scenarios, it's actually cheaper to make than other factions because it is only one role, so it's actually easier to win air superiority because you can build more fighters for the same cost. And then once you have air superiority, it only takes 7 of these Mercies to kill any unupgraded commander. So one good tactic is to screen with these fighters and get enemy air defense distracted, and then you can fly in with these Mercies to snipe the commander. And speaking of Aeon Air Force, their Tech 1 bomber stuns units, so if enemy units are walking around and shooting, this Tech 1 bomb will make them stop for a brief period of time. The Tech 3 strategic bomber tracks targets with its bombs, and this makes it easier to snipe ACUs, because normally with an ACU you can kind of try to juke out bombs a little bit, but it's just much harder since the bombs are actually tracking the ACU. They're the only faction with a Tech 3 torpedo bomber, and they're the only faction randomly to have an AA gunship. It still does damage to ground like all gunships, but this one has pretty decent anti-air capabilities as well. And this honestly seems a little bit strange to me since Aeon is all about unit specialization, like they have this dedicated attack boat, they split up their Tech 2 fighters into air only and ground only, so it's a little bit weird that they have this really good multi-role gunship at Tech 3 that none of the other factions do, but it is definitely something to take advantage of if you are playing as Aeon. The next tip, we're looking at some of the cool commander upgrades you can get for Aeon, and among other things, you can turn him into a nasty combat ACU, because on his right arm, you can get a rate of fire increase on his main cannon. On his left arm, you can get a range increase on his main cannon, which also applies to overcharge, I believe, this range increase. And on his back, you can get shield generators. So this guy turns into a nasty little mini experimental kind of thing. But he is not as expendable as an experimental, of course, because if he dies, the game is over. So use this combat ACU with caution. Alternatively, if you are in the early game and you're still using these Auroras are notoriously worse than all the other factions in a direct fight. Auroras will always lose, but they have the advantage of range. So if you're new, you're going to want to micro your units a little bit to keep them out of range of the other guys so that they can shoot and the other guys cannot shoot back. But of course, they can shoot farther than they can see, so you always want to have scouts in this mix. And one thing you can do if you have your commander on the front lines is to get this Omni sensor. So if your Auroras are alongside your commander, there will always be very good sensors nearby, and they'll also be able to see stealth units due to the Omni suite this comes with. And my last two tips both have to do with experimentals. And in the first case of this experimental resource generator, which essentially gives you unlimited resources once it is created, what is the very first thing you should do once this is finished? I'll give you just a couple seconds to think about it. And the answer is, of course, build another one. And build another one far away from the first one, because when these explode, they are a giant nuke, so you do not want them in the middle of your base. And of course, you want to build another one because as these give you unlimited resources, one, it's basically a game ender because you should be able to easily overwhelm your enemy with unlimited resources, and two, if the enemy sees this, this will be priority target number 1, so you can guarantee yourself that all of their strat bombers, all of their nukes, all of their everything will be coming for this. So you want another one to be built with the limitless resources you have, and you want it to be built far away because 1, it's a nuke, and 2, you don't want to make it an easy target. And don't be frustrated if when you turn on this economic overlay, it doesn't look like it's producing that much. It is, it just scales with your economy. I believe it is capped at 10,000 mass and 1 million energy, but with those resources, you can make another Paragon in about 25 seconds, I think, so it is essentially limitless resources. And the last tip has to do with the Gargantuan experimental aircraft carrier, also nicknamed the Donut. And this thing is very good at pretty much everything. It has pretty good AA, it has an excellent ground firing laser, and it also has some depth charges for Navy, but the tip has to do with the fall damage. If you look in the very bottom of this menu in the dark red, the air crash on depth damage, it's 10,000. So if you send this thing in to snipe an ACU and it does a little bit of damage before being taken out, there's a chance that this thing could fall on the ACU and kill it anyway. But yeah guys, that'll just about wrap it up for today's video. Leave a comment down below if you do think I forgot anything, and as always, stay tuned for more to come.